Good morning and welcome to Moonlore, Astrolore's discussion on the new and full moon each month. Jennie Date of Hidden Path Astrology is here to discuss the full moon that falls on July 5th, 2020. This is a very interesting full moon. What do you think, Jennie?
Yeah, this one's might pack quite a punch. So we're gonna have a little discussion today and hopefully highlight some of those things and also give you a chance to think about where this might fall in your chart.
Absolutely. So yeah, when we talk about the full moon, we're thinking back to two different periods of time. We're thinking back because we're thinking of the whole cycle, the cycles that the moon makes. And first of all, just in the monthly phases of the moon, at the full moon, we're thinking back to the new moon that happened 2 weeks ago. And we are also in the larger cycle thinking back to the new moon in Capricorn in December. I think it happened the day after the Christmas holiday. So it happened on December 26th. That was also an eclipse, as is this full moon is an eclipse as well. So from there, do you want me to open up the chart itself yet, Jennie? Or
well, I'll just add a couple more things just to what Laurie's saying. So basically what we have on July 5th will be this full moon. It is going to be a lunar eclipse. So that's when the Earth's shadow falls on the moon, and the moon turns interesting colors. Back in December, on December 26th, when we had the new moon, that was actually a solar eclipse where the moon actually blocked the light of the sun. So it kind of links these cycles together even more strongly that we had that solar eclipse and now this lunar eclipse. So it has a little extra punch to it when you consider that. Eclipses often signify a little more oomph or something that maybe doesn't seem like a big deal, but then turns out to have a lot of importance. So kind of hold those things in your mind as we're having this discussion.
Right, and thinking of the new moon as the time of planting and the full moon as the full illumination, the full expression of what began. To think back at the end of December, what was implanted in the world, in the culture, in your personal life that is now suddenly has a great deal of clarity.
Yeah, and it's pretty hard to miss the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and definitely the significations of that pandemic are very present in this full moon chart that we're going to show you, and they were also present in a much more subtle way in the December chart of the new moon. So what we really get to see is, as Laurie's saying, like the cyclical viewpoint of both the 6-month cycle, the Capricorn new moon to the Capricorn full moon, and the 2-week cycle of 2 weeks ago when we had the new moon. So.
All right. You want me to share the chart?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you want me to share both or just the one for this full moon?
Let's just look at the one. It's kind of dizzying looking at the both. If it makes sense, we can show the other one towards the end.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So here we are with the full moon happens at exactly 12:44 a.m. on July 5th. So that's, it's July 4th, a little after midnight. For people in other time zones, it actually will fall on July 4th, which is a holiday in the U.S. And here we can see that clear opposition, 13 degrees Cancer to 13 degrees Capricorn.
Yeah.
Okay, what jumps out for you when you look at this chart, Jennie?
Well, I think first of all, we're talking about the moon. It's the full moon, and you cannot miss that there it is at the top of the chart amidst all that Capricorn. Now, what is really interesting about this is that if you look at all that Capricorn up at the top of the chart there, you can see that Saturn is in retrograde, and it only just moved back into Capricorn.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, we have all these Capricorn planets again together. So it's you can't really miss that. Gosh, it does make me kind of want to show the other chart. Let's do it at the end, just because you'll
Yeah.
see. But anyway, that's what stands out to me is the moon in Capricorn, which is intense. It's serious. It's something that is serious that is going to show up with that Capricorn designation.
Yeah,
Um,
isn't that?
and
And
visible, whoo, right at the top of the chart.
yeah, and you also, I don't know, I can't think about all that in Capricorn without thinking of all the issues of big business, big government, all that stuff, which is Capricorn. And then the opposition to the fourth house of home, the sign of Cancer, which is family and nurturance. And there is this clear opposition here. Wow.
I can't help but think that definitely represents some of the tensions between what we're seeing at the top of the chart, big government, like you just said, all of these huge pieces that are moving, this huge amount of money that has moved in the last few months based on the pandemic. And I see that as like the big business, and down at the bottom of the chart, seeing the sun and Mercury, I feel like that's the people.
Yeah.
That's like us at home, kind of confused about what's going on, like next to this Mercury retrograde, like not quite sure, like should we continue to stay home? Yes, we should. There's all this craziness going on, but at the same time, just a lot of political unrest and really just not being okay with the status quo. I don't know, the government up there, that's what's showing up, that's what's being highlighted, I think, by this full moon.
And we also cannot forget that Mars, just as Saturn just backed back into Capricorn to continue building that tension up there, Mars just moved into Aries. If you think you've been seeing something recently in terms of the anger and aggression in the world, the gloves have just come off as Mars has moved into Aries, its home sign, where it is going to remain for 6 months because of the retrograde. And in the course of its time there, it's going to be squaring these planets. Now, I know we're getting a little off from exactly the full moon itself, but this is stuff that just, you can't help but see when you look at this.
Yeah, no, this is important too, because I feel a part of what we're trying to do here is just let you all know like what's showing up from the astrology lens in terms of symbolism of what we're seeing in the larger world. So I think we'd be remiss to not include it. Because also I was going to add too that you also can't miss the fact that Neptune is in a soft aspect, so it's in a sextile with pretty much the moon. It's maybe a little bit out of orb, but I just bring that up because I think there's still a lot of confusion. Thank you, Laurie. Yep, there's still a lot of confusion about what is really happening, and it's kind of like, because here we are, we're opening the country back up. But the numbers are exploding right now. So there's definitely the sense to this whole chart of like trying to get to what is really happening. Yeah. Though what I think is happening too, if you look at Venus and Gemini down here, is just come out of retrograde. And I think what the reason I'm bringing that up is because I think we're all waking up a little bit. We're starting to go like, oh, wait a minute. Like, what are our values here? What is something that we need to see? How do we need to think about this?
Yeah, and with all of that, with Venus's just coming out of that retrograde, where for that period of time while Venus was in retrograde in Gemini, we really did a lot of work collectively and individually on developing a deeper understanding of our shared values. Mm-hmm. And now it is direct. We are ready to take action on how we now see our values. Mm-hmm. Just a tiny little aside with that. I went online to order some books. You could not get, several weeks ago, you could not get a copy of White Fragility or a ton of other books regarding, really looking at some of the racial issues that white people need to be looking at. You couldn't get a hold of those books because so many people were reading them while Venus was retrograde in Gemini. And that's a very encouraging piece to this.
Yeah, I agree.
This is not, with looking at these difficulties, it's not without hopefulness. And I think part of that Neptune also brings in some hope and potential for being able to see beyond what the obvious darkness is.
Yeah, and I agree. It's also important to bring up the things that are hopeful and useful. And the other thing I would add is that you also can see that Uranus there is in a trine to the moon and to the midheaven.
Ooh, lovely.
So to me, it's like Uranus is the great awakener.
Yes.
This is the planet, and it's in Venus's sign of Taurus.
Oh,
so
lovely.
Uranus wants us to wake up, and with this full moon, it is saying, "Wake up!" It's saying it is really highlighting that, and that's good. It's a nice flow of energy.
Yeah, and it's also in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. So again, it brings in the issue of our values. We are waking up, and that wake up is going to certainly impact all of this. Interesting.
Yeah. And the final flourish I would add would just simply be, again, Mercury's in retrograde next to the sun down there in Cancer. So this is the time, we still do need to be staying home. So use that time to educate. Use that time to open your mind. Use that time to go deep and think about, all of these issues, and just think about things in a bigger picture and from a deeper stance. It's an opportunity in that way.
Right. It's like the Venus retrograde really gave us the opportunity to go back and evaluate our values. And now the Mercury retrograde is giving us time to reevaluate and rethink our thinking, which is, they're combined, but they're separate. And to bring in the issue of study and thoughtfulness around Cancer, around family, around love, around giving nurturance and care, and the protective part of Cancer as well.
And while at home.
And while at home. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I think brings us kind of to our final point of this, which is simply, where does this fall in your chart? If you have your chart on hand, or you know where Cancer and Capricorn fall in your chart, especially that Capricorn. Use that.
Can I interrupt you for one moment? There's one piece that I just wanted to bring in here. When I just was saying, Venus giving us a chance to rethink our values, Mercury retrograde giving us a way to rethink how we talk about these issues. And then when Mars goes retrograde in September, giving us an opportunity to rethink how we are taking action on those things. Awesome. To think about these three retrogrades, which I keep hearing, oh my God, this is this horrible, horrible thing with all these retrogrades. Well, gosh, I don't want to swear, so I'll be careful. We need to be doing this retrograde work. We need to be digging into what are our values, how are we using our voice, and how are we using our ability as citizens of this world to take action. That's what this period of time is really highlighting. Oh, that gives me chills to just think about. Think about those three retrogrades side by side, rather than in a negative way, in a way that really empowers us as we move forward. And we will move forward into 2021 with a very different understanding of the world that we live in. Woo.
Yeah, that's the way you just phrase that too. It's kind of like the retrogrades are like the antidote, because we've always been a very busy society where one thing to the next thing to the next thing, and none of us have time to think or breathe, or in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, we have been asked to stop. We are being asked to slow down. We're asked to reflect. Right. And I know that people are in a lot of different situations with lots of different stressors, but if you, as much as you can, take that time to reevaluate and take that breath. And we're in the middle of it. I think maybe that's some of the gift of this year, even though it's also some of the intensity.
Right. It's the difficulty and the gift, which is, you know, as you work with astrology over time, it's what you really learn, you know, even in looking at natal charts. It's the biggest difficulties in our lives that bring the most gifts. That's always the way it works.
Yeah.
When we hit a wall, we figure out how to go around it or go over it or work with it. And those are the gifts. So I think it's time to celebrate all of these retrogrades.
Yeah, because it's really not often, folks, that you get Venus and Mars going retrograde in the same year. Mercury does retrograde usually 3 times a year. Yeah. Not as unusual, but having all 3 back to back to back is
it's very unusual.
Not lost, should not be lost on you. So
right, absolutely. Okay, so back to what you were saying about where this falls in your chart.
Oh, I just, just considering, think for yourself. Maybe some of you did that new moon ritual a couple weeks ago during that solar eclipse on the 21st, which was also right after the summer solstice. So this is the time for what's coming to fruition from those 2 weeks.
So look to the sign, the house that has Cancer in it, because that's where the new moon was in Cancer. So what began there? And now look to the house that has Capricorn, and that's that area with Saturn having backed back into it. The house that holds Capricorn in your chart has held a lot of challenge over the last couple of years. You've been learning a lot there. So right now that is reactivated more with the full moon and with Saturn moving back into it. And while you're looking at those areas in your chart, make sure you re-look at, the house that holds Gemini. That's where your values have been really being reevaluated in the past weeks. And the area of your chart that holds Aries is going to become very activated over the coming 6 months. Woo.
Anything you want to share about where that's hitting you and your chart, Laurie? Laurie on the spot.
Put me on the spot. No. Well, the full moon, that is occurring between my 5th and 11th house. So, that piece is, 5th to 11th, it's issues of where you give love versus where you receive love. So I haven't given a whole lot of thought to that with this full moon, but I will. As far as the area that holds Aries, that's in my 8th house. That's deep, intense issues with other people's baggage getting under my skin. I feel it the minute Mars moved into that Aries. I feel it. My moon is also in Aries, so it's like yeah. If you've got a moon in Aries, hold on to your hat and be as kind as you can to yourself and other people, because Mars in Aries is intense, combative type energy. So I know that over the next 6 months, I'm going to have to work to soften my voice a little.
Yeah, it's also incredibly mobilizing.
Incredibly mobilizing.
It's ignition.
Yes. Right. It's time to take action. It's time to really think, look at the house Aries holds in your chart. What do you need to take action about in that area of your life? Yeah. What house is Aries in for you, Jennie?
Well, Aries is in my 10th house of career.
Oh.
So it's very much time to continue to take action towards building my astrology.
Okay, so on that note, what's your website again, so people can?
It is hiddenpathastrology.com, and you can set up a consultation with me there. So yeah, there's that. The Capricorn falls in my 7th house. The full moon's falling there, so that's highlighting issues of partnership and colleagues and partner at home, and across the axis to self. I have Cancer rising, so Cancer in the 1st house, that's where the sun falls. So it's sort of time for me to put myself out there and continue to work on these relationships and public relationships, and allow that Mars to activate more of what I'm doing. So
yeah. And make an appointment with Jennie. She's a kick-ass astrologer.
Thanks, Laurie.
She really is. Okay.
All right.
Is that pretty much clear? Do you
Yeah,
feel
it's
like,
whew, it's a big one.
whew, it is. It's a big period of time, I think, for clearly, for our culture, for our individual lives. One thing I want to say before we get off here is stay at home.
Yeah.
When you have to go out, wear your masks. This is not a time to fool around with this stuff. Pluto is coming back to, I mean, Jupiter is coming back to conjunct with Pluto very soon. Oh, tomorrow, I think. Tomorrow.
Yeah. That Capricorn pileup definitely is tied in with the pandemic, and we're
Oh my
seeing it's
God.
piled back up. It's spread back out a bit. You know, Saturn went into Aquarius, and now it's poof. So.
And I do want to say one more thing about that. On a hopeful note, you know, you think about those 3 planets that all came together, and actually when they initially came together, Mars was with them, all in Capricorn. That pileup of Capricorn planets, those are conjunctions. Conjunctions are the beginning of a cycle. So this is, you know, this is a time of new beginnings. If you start like listening to podcasts about the new ways that people are, you know, all the ways people are re-envisioning government and business. There are some incredibly, you know, Uranus trining that. There's some incredible, innovative ideas that people are bringing to the table and ways of thinking about this with more sanity and more of that Cancer protection and love being brought into the conversations. You know, you hear about defund the police and people get all freaked out, but you know what's really being said is let's take some of that money and put it into services that would help protect people, so that if someone is suffering from a mental health crisis or alcohol crisis, that the police they're not necessarily the right people to call. Maybe we should have other systems in place to help people that don't bring in police that are basically military personnel. Their job is something different. And I know I'm getting off on a rant, but Mars,
social justice instead of clamping down, it's more support systems. So yeah, these are all really important things for all of us to consider and understand what the issues are.
Right, and these are not political issues. These are social justice issues.
Yeah.
And I think if we can just get really understanding that this is not a political issue, this is a social justice issue.
And this is highlighting what it means to be American for everybody, all different kinds of people, and what that really is. I mean, this really is a time of questioning that fundamental identity and looking at stuff we haven't looked at before in a new way with a new lens, and then, you know, really being open to the stuff that has been going on for hundreds of years. So
yes,
it's a major opportunity.
It is a major opportunity. Yeah. And I think we should get off because I can feel my mind going into 20 other things that I could start ranting about. I think Mars in Aries is definitely, I can feel it. I can feel it in my blood. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Okay. And we'll do a new moon video in 2 weeks. Thank you, Jennie.
Thank you.